Hello, everyone. I am so excited for EmpowHER Leverage AI Leaders Summit. I am joined today by some of my absolute favorite females in this space who are not only kicking ass and taking names, but these ladies are huge advocates for more women to get involved in AI. So with that, I'm going to run through a quick round of introductions. And please bear with me today. I don't have a producer, so I'm going to try to produce this live and click on buttons and make sure I get to all of your questions and comments. And as we're doing introductions, please put in a comment where you're tuning in from today. Again, this is such a beautiful global event. We want to hear from you, so let us know what city or country you're dialing in. And with that, I'd like to start with Noelle. Welcome to the stage, Noelle. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, everybody. So excited to be here. Yes, what an incredible lineup. I mean, even if especially if I wasn't part of it, I would be here. I'm so excited to hear from everyone here, as well as all of the people listening in. So great to see everyone, Greg and Mohammed. Of course, am Noelle Russell. I am right now at Accenture, leading global AI solutions and heading up our generative AI practice, which is a really exciting time. I also am the CEO and founder of AI Leadership Institute. And really, like you said, I am a huge proponent and advocate of creating a more inclusive space in this industry, letting everyone know that they have a place to be and a place to play, and more importantly, a place to learn and honestly succeed. I think we have a huge opportunity for a lot of prosperity for all of us in this new world. And it requires all of our unique voices to create those solutions. I come from Amazon Alexa, Microsoft AI, National Public Radio, lots of friends from all over. So super excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
And Noelle, sorry to put you on the spot, but tell us, you're an award-winning woman in the
Oh, of
space.
course. Yes. I recently actually got my third time MVP from Microsoft in artificial intelligence, which means that basically I'm super excited about it. I use it every single day. And more importantly than just using it, I try to tell the story of how I use it, how it's changing lives. But yes, thank you very much. I just got that award like a month ago, so super excited for it.
Thank you. And Lisa, you're up next. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Lisa Palmer. I just have a doctorate hot off the presses, quite literally had my paper published in June. So I studied 46 enterprise use cases that were specific to enterprise success with using artificial intelligence. And it was just an incredible amount of fun to learn from AI practitioners and AI software providers and AI consultants during that process. And that was all building on top of a long career as an IT practitioner myself. I've also worked for Microsoft and Gartner, and I am just incredibly excited, like Noelle, about the potential for what is happening with artificial intelligence and the potential for all of us, particularly for women, to really have a voice and to change the trajectory of what history has created for us to move things in a super positive direction if you're willing to just jump in and learn. And it's easy to access. There are so many different ways to use AI and to become part of the community. And that's the message I want you all to take away from today, is that it is accessible for you and we want you to join us.
Thank you, Lisa. Laura, you're up next.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Laura Adele. I am so excited to be here today. I'm from Microsoft. I am the Chief Data Scientist and Lead Analytics Business Strategist for our AI innovation market. So really, that's a big fancy title or department that just says I work on really cool projects in AI and I incubate them. And so what's really neat about that is this idea of the next generation of analytics being infused with AI and industry and taking it out of that research basis into the practicum where so many more people will be able to understand and use this. And specifically, I am working and supporting and sponsoring women in tech is an incredible passion of mine. I have a podcast, Analytics, where we center all of our conversations on women in tech and our career journeys. Everybody I've had on from 16-year-old all the way to a CEO sharing all the same sort of challenges and joys and really lifting each other up. And so I was very excited when I was invited to be here. You know, I started my career at Apple on Siri Generation 1. And when I look at where we are today now with generative AI and how that circle has, you know, turned so quickly, it's incredibly exciting. But it's also a time when we should all reflect and think about the responsibility that we all have when we have the power of, you know, generative AI and AI in general at our fingertips. Last note, I'm coming to you live from a bedroom because a tree in the North Carolina storms that happened over the last 2 days fell through my office and podcasting studio. And so I've been relegated to my new office. And so I appreciate you and my mobile command center here, and I look forward to understanding more about your journey and yourselves. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, that must have been so scary.
It really was. It is, if you've ever had a tree fall through your roof, and I'm not sure how many people might raise their hand, it sounds like a bomb going off. So you can imagine as you're in a remote or a virtual call, you're talking about your day and it's like, boom, being lifted up out of your seat. That was definitely one for the books in terms of being on camera. So
oh my goodness. I hope everyone's okay.
Everyone's fine. Thank you so much.
Good. Shamalia, welcome.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Hello, everyone. My name is Shamla Prayaga. I'm the Senior Software Product Manager at NVIDIA, and I lead some of the generative AI and AI in general as well. Some of the products related to that. We launched one of the products yesterday, AI Playground. So I'm really excited about it. Prior to NVIDIA, I have worked with companies like Ford Motor Company, where I have led the voice in the car for the traditional vehicles and autonomous vehicle. And similar to Noel, I also worked with Amazon on Alexa as well for the Gen 1 and Gen 2 launch. So yeah, that's my background. And I'm also the author of 2 books. One of the book is called The Emotionally Engaged Digital Assistant, because I saw a huge gap. Like, we are designing technologies, but those technologies are designed purely keeping in mind, a certain kind of stakeholders, a certain kind of use cases, but we are not thinking about technology differently. So this book talks about how we can humanize technology, how we can humanize ethics, how we can humanize privacy, how each of these lenses are important when you are designing. So definitely, was an interesting, exciting journey for me to write that book. And I also am the author of a book, which is my memoir, Close Call, My Lives of Unseen Miracle. From a small town in India to where I am today, it's a huge, huge journey. And I give credit to all the miracles which has happened in my life. And also I'm authoring another book called The Invisible Threat in the Age of AI. All the great things we are talking about, like AI is great and, doing all the things. But then, hey, there's deepfakes. How do we think about it? Hey, there's biases. How do we think about it? These are the kind of, issues we have to be talking about from all the different angles. So I'm talking about and writing about it as well. And when I'm not writing and when I'm not working on my NVIDIA related stuffs, I'm also the founder of the Digital Assistant Academy, where I train and certify people on conversational AI, generative AI as well. And also the host of the podcast, The Future is Spoken.
Wow, you're not accomplished at all. I mean, none of you ladies are, and this is just, it's just crazy. And with that, Andy, please come on and introduce yourself to everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, T, for having me on Empower. I'm so excited to be here. I know a lot of these faces already, but I'm so excited to share my journey with you. I started out in digital transformation in oil and gas when that was brand new, years and years ago. From there, I went into industrial automation and supply chain automation. And that's where I caught the AI bug and met NVIDIA. And I'll tell you, I was coached in my appraisals to stop talking about digital. Stop, Andy, that's the future. We don't need to talk about AI right now. I left that company and I became the head of AI for Lenovo, a $70 billion company. So I think they were wrong. This is a huge opportunity for all of us. So one thing I'll coach all of you is, don't let them dull your sparkle. If you have a vision, if you can see how warehouses could be intelligent, or retail environments, or restaurants by leveraging artificial intelligence, you pursue that passion, because you're right, girl. So what I do now, after I left Lenovo in January of this year, I'm with Radius AI. Radius AI won VentureBeat's Top Edge AI Innovator in the World. We are 38 different use cases for retail, restaurant, convenience, and supply chain. And I'll talk to you a little bit later about what some of those are and what's driving that growth.
Thank you, Andy. Again, I am just beyond excited for today. Our first talk track is going to be about the importance of diversity. Why is it important that women have a voice, and not just our voice from one country, but our global voice that can potentially impact the development of AI. So with that, I'm going to let all of the panel members here, popcorn style, kind of riff a little bit about why it's important that women should be a part of developing AI applications and how we can all become a little bit more involved.
All right. Well, I'll start off. I'm a single mother of 4. And I juggle so many balls, right? And when you deploy artificial intelligence, especially at the edge, you're having to have POS systems talk to cameras, talk to servers. That's what computer vision is, right? So I have to basically be friends with all those folks, the camera folks and the GPU folks, the CPU folks, the server folks. Everybody, we come together as like a technology ecosystem. So I think women are uniquely qualified for artificial intelligence because we naturally are trying to juggle so many balls, get the carpool, make sure everybody has everything for their school lunch. We naturally are intuitive and collaborative and team players. So I think it's super important that women are not only part of the AI movement, but we lead it.
I love that. I will build on that as well. I'm also a mom of 6 little kiddos. Some are little, some are littler. But I 100% agree. Like the amount of things I have to keep in my brain at any one time is, I used to think this is just how everyone works. And now I realize it's not really how everyone works. And we actually do provide a very unique perspective, not just as moms, but also as caregivers, also as, like I ended up being an early developer on Amazon Alexa. So it's great to see another Alexa family member here in those early days. And I remember being the only female perspective, the only Latina, the only person who cared about mindfulness. I came from a Buddhist background and I wanted more mindfulness on the platform. And I remember people around me who did not look like me, did not sound like me. And they would say things like, I mean, really? Like mindfulness on a kitchen device? Like I don't get it. And the important thing to always remember is that oftentimes when you're in these moments of innovation, like Andy's talking about, most of the people around you won't get it. And it's really important to, number one, be confident in your unique perspective that you actually will serve more people. Like my son has Down syndrome. So I have another lens of being a special needs mom. And I built things for him that actually millions of people have thanked me for. And none of them really had special needs of any kind, but I built it for him and it served more people. So I encourage you to embrace that unique part of yourself that drives you towards building a solution with passion and enthusiasm. Because even if everyone around you is like, I'm not really sure that's worth it, because you actually speak to a different demographic, a different psychographic, a different part of the world. And that world needs your voice more than ever. And so I'm a big believer, 100%. Moms, really any unique part of you makes you a huge asset to the world of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and I would add on to that, and I have a slightly different perspective. This is all great, and yeah, I come from a very small town in India, like I mentioned, where my parents were ready for me to get married when I was 18. They were like already seeing matches, and they were like, okay, get out the door. You're not a responsibility anymore. But I had some other plans. I never wanted to settle down, right? So why I wanted to bring this thing is there's a bias. There's a huge bias which exists in this society. Like women are supposed to do this, women are supposed to do this. At this age, they should have kids. At this age, they should get married. And, all of these kind of things. And the same bias exists in AI as much. Like when the earlier generation of Alexa, Google, Siri, all of these were launched, they were all female. Why? Yeah, we can put it in technology saying like they are female because female voice is easy to train, right? Of course, like female voice is easy to train, because of the voice modulation and all. Great. But then there's another aspect which I got to know, and it was very much shocking when I was working with Ford Motor Company trying to get a different voice. The users had a different perspective. Like they used to see female as as like secretary or admin kind of people. So in their mind it was like, okay, if I'm asking something like do this for me, do that for me, play music for me, check my calendar, I would rather this than a male voice. However, if there's something related to like change my tires, give me the owner's manual, or those kind of things, I would prefer a male voice. So I feel like female needs to be in the AI space because we need to break those biases, not just thinking about all the great things what Andrea and Noel said, but also thinking about like who else can be a greater person than us to be breaking those biases which exist in the society.
Yeah, I would just add on one last point. I think this is an area that's near and dear to my heart, and to something Noel said that really resonated with me. I have dyslexia, and I remember as a child being labeled as having this deficiency. In fact, they put me into remedial classes because they didn't understand where to put me. And then when I tested out as being advanced, for my age, then it really provided a label that they didn't know what to do with. And so that always gave me this perspective of, in the workforce, labels are, they're incredibly powerful. And when you have one, sometimes we tend to own it as women, or at least I do. And I can tell you from my time at Apple, and I think somebody said, keep your sparkle. Maybe it was Andrea. I couldn't agree with you more. In my time when I was at Apple, it was one of those moments where it was my first job. I'm working on this revolutionary usage of NLP with what was going to, become the iPhone. It was incredibly exciting. And I brought to a meeting, this fuzzy pink pen, and I'll never forget this. Steve Jobs came to that meeting unexpectedly. It was his pet project, and he zeroed in on me in a room that was 50 engineers deep and literally kicked me out because of that pencil, and then proceeded to call me a cheerleader. And when I tell the story, I always say I was the nerd. So I was kind of like, oh, well, that's nice. I'm a cheerleader. And I went home and I'm like, well, I was so, it bothered me so much because at that point, he then said, you'll never be in another meeting with me again. He literally kicked me out for the rest of my career at Apple. And that stayed with me for the next 10 years, that imposter syndrome that I need to put on a front that says I'm something else than what I truly am. And when so empowering as I've gotten older, and as I've started to mentor and sponsor other women, new or coming into tech and AI, is this idea that you can really own who you are. And that's why, to me, it is so important, both representing that I have a learning disability. It's not a label. It is just who I am. And in fact, the tools that I learned with that learning disability, as they call it, are actually the tools that I think make me that out of the box thinker today, and why I'm so successful in my career. But I think, we have this unique opportunity, not just as women, but in my case, supporting other, demographics, as what was mentioned, or other groups that have disabilities or other accessibility challenges within this community that sometimes or oftentimes are underrepresented in this field. And so, from my perspective, I think it's so important to not just be women, but women supporting first other women as they come up in their career, and two, women supporting, accessibility on a wide, broader scale when it comes to our AI industry.
I'm going to jump in here and just add to, thank you so much for sharing that very personal insight, Laura. It hits me in my heart. On my first day at college, I went to an engineering school. I grew up in a farming community. I knew absolutely no one who was an engineer. I didn't know what that meant, but I was only going to be able to go to college if I got a scholarship. I got a full scholarship to attend the Colorado School of Mines. And so I said, I will learn how to be an engineer because I really wanted to get into a field where I could make a difference and change the forward trajectory of my life. And on my first day there were two experiences. The first was I walked into the first class of the day, and there was myself and one other woman in a classroom with 300 men. it was more men. I grew up in a very small rural community. I'd never seen that many men in one room before, let alone be only one of two there. And then the next experience after that was, so I really had to steel myself not to walk out, to not be overwhelmed by that. And then later in the same day, I walked into my first calculus class. And again, there was myself and one other woman. We did not know one another. We did soon after this. But he shared with us as we walked in the door that no woman has ever passed my class and you won't be the first. So I was in the moment, I was shocked, but I decided I was glad. And when I reflect on that, I'm grateful that he was honest, because I could have spent an entire semester beating my head against a wall where I couldn't have been successful. Instead, I was able to leave, go and find the only female instructor, math instructor on campus, and get into her class. I stood at the back of her class for 30 days waiting for other people to drop out until I actually had a seat I could sit in. So fast forward to just a week ago, I'm sitting in a boardroom in New York, and I am again one of, in this case, one of 3 women in the entire room. So the good news is that the ratios are improving, because it was a much smaller group. The ratios are improving, but it is important to really be resilient and be involved and be yourself in these situations, because my perspective growing up in a farming community and the things that I bring to the table, I'm actually able to influence things that happen today in the agriculture community using artificial intelligence. And who would have thought that that would be something that I would ultimately put together? So bring your whole self to the story.
Thank you, Lisa. And I've got a quick story to share myself. So I don't have a technical background. Dropped out of school at 15. I was a farm girl from country Australia, where you literally have children before you're 20, and you would probably by 30 if you have stayed with the same man, have another 6, or you might be on your 2nd or 3rd marriage. And so for me, I didn't even finish school, right? But I was always passionate about the world. I was passionate about tech. I found myself in the military around 17, attached to an infantry unit. I was one of 3 girls, and I was the only one to graduate. So talking about a male-dominated space. And I remember thinking to myself, never scream. I was never allowed to scream, not even on the highway, of course. Like, guys would scream, people would scream. I was like, you can't show 1 ounce of fear or weakness. And I ended up being like #1 scout for one section, but I had to, wear the same weight. I think my pack, webbing and rifle was more than my body weight at the time. And it's raining and it's storming and you're in the bush for 50 days. And anyway, the long and short of it, that's when I realized, like, I didn't even think that there was a difference between men and women. And I just, from a very, very young age, always wanted the opportunities that they had to prove myself. So look, fast forward, I ended up in digital transformation from a young age. I studied. I was always the first person at work, always the last to leave. I read as many research papers. I found as many badass females and leaders in digital transformation before AI that would support me and teach me and give me an opportunity. And with that, I got to work with the Amazons of the world, the Googles of the world, the TikToks of the world, the IBM iX of the world back in Asia. I've had an international career that's taken me through Asia, obviously through Australia, now the Americas, but Dubai and London and Europe. And I think part of that was just not taking no for an answer and actually doing anything possible to educate myself, to get mentors, which is why I'm so passionate about bringing women together to talk about how more women can get involved. You might not have an AI degree or a tech background, but you can now have a career in AI. I'm proof of it. So with that, I want to kind of talk a little bit now about bias, both algorithmic biases and data biases, which are the backbone of any AI application. And Noelle, I was wondering if you could just kind of talk us through the difference between the two, and let's just riff a little bit on how we can start to mitigate some of these biases.
Yeah, maybe we could go. I always think of things, it's maybe the way my brain works as like a process, right? Or a sequence. And oftentimes, especially in, I've had the luxury, or maybe I was lucky. I don't know. I have a interesting perspective on luck, but I was involved in some of these very large models, right? Alexa being one of them. I was at Microsoft where when cognitive services was just becoming a thing. It actually hadn't even been launched yet. How do we think about, when we're building these services, if you look around, we just finished talking about how unique we are as women on these teams. Oftentimes we're the only women on these teams. And Alexa was 10 years ago. So it's interesting to me that the lessons I learned 10 years ago, I unfortunately today am still the only woman in the rooms that I am in 10 years later in the same tech. So all of you, everyone listening to the sound of my voice, oh my gosh, do we need you? And are we as a community willing to help you get into this space? But the first thing that I noticed was around data collection, and how actually we were very intentional about trying to collect data, especially for Alexa, to try and collect data in a very diverse way. In other words, let's make sure anyone who wants to provide data to the model could do that. And one of the things we found out accidentally and somewhat in a heartbreaking way is that in our attempt to get as much diverse data collection as possible, we actually set up a situation where only a certain type of person could show up. I'll give you a very quick example. So we would tell people, hey, come and help train Alexa, be part of the beta. And we would say, in order to do that, you can come and talk to this device in beta before you get a device. And you can come in the morning, you can come at lunchtime, you can come after work. And we would be very proud of the fact that we were like making it available to everyone in the company. But as a mom, and back then I had less children, but as a mom, I realized the flaw in that idea, right? Is that, and I ended up getting off stages for years after that, and women coming up to me and saying, why, for goodness sakes, does Alexa listen to my husband better than it listens to me? And it reinforced this idea, like, we didn't do a good job, because guess who could show up before work and at lunch and after work and in spare moments? Like those of us who didn't, it turned out to be a certain demographic of people that showed up at those moments. So really creating, when you're thinking about data collection, it's not just about how do I get inclusive data sets? Sure. But it's really being very creative in your approach to gathering those data sets. And I think we learned a lot during COVID as well in the healthcare space. Again, same problem. We were getting a lot of data. We had models that were 98% accurate in identifying COVID in radiology films, until we realized that the data set we used to train it on was not diverse. And then all of a sudden it was 98% accurate if you were white. And that is heartbreaking to any data scientist, because we never think like at least the data scientists I know, we never think like that. Extend that now to algorithmic bias. And I think this is a great segue into the world we are in generative AI, right? In generative AI, we are now leveraging models we didn't build, we didn't train, and we don't know the data sets that were used. And guess what? It's trained on the internet, which means that it's trained on all this data that was only provided by people who had access to a web server, who could publish content on the internet over the last 20 years, 30 years. And guess what? No matter who that is, it's not everybody. Not everyone in the world could publish on the internet and get access to this, be ingested into this model. So it's immediately biased. I just recently posted on LinkedIn a video someone put together, and I thought it was fascinating, where when you type in to Midjourney, you ask it to create a autistic person, like literally no phrases around gender identity. And it immediately started showing hundreds of images of white male, young, autistic looking kids. And it was interesting that only out of 100 images, only 2 were female. And out of 100 images, none were anything other than white. None. So these are the types of things that we get impacted by algorithmic bias, because we're now using models, thankfully, that we didn't have to create, but now have this inherent bias that if we're not paying attention, could significantly change the outcomes that we can generate. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So on that for a second, let's address, and I think it's really, really important for the audience because I'm seeing so many amazing comments about some people are starting in their AI careers, others are thinking about it. Let's talk a little bit about how many different roles can have a voice in AI, right? And I think this is like really, really important. So when I think about it, it's everything from somebody who is sales, a marketing person can join an AI company or be part of a team, a data annotator. Now for the audience, like this is somebody that can help provide data or annotate data that is training some of these models. And they need to be from all sorts of diverse backgrounds and skill sets and have different domain skills and knowledge that the mechanics and of the world and, retail assistants, like everything, like anyone and everyone can be involved in that question. So in your opinion, Noelle, like how many different people now make up the different AI roles? It's not just data science, it's not just engineers. And for the other women as well, please jump in here because you're from different domains. And I think it's really important that everybody understands like just how many people now can touch an AI program.
Yeah, maybe I'll start very quickly by saying, this panel is a great example. Like in our introduction, nothing was the same, like nothing. And I think that is a great indication of the type of diversity, not just gender and ethnic diversity, but neurodiversity that's required for success in these projects. Like when we go to market with a product built by a homogeneous group of people, a group of people that are always nodding along with each other, like we end up delivering a product to the world that hurts people, right? That there's a certain person who tries to get access to that model, get access to the benefit, and it actually treats them unfairly or worse, unjustly. It ends up hurting them in very real ways. And so some of my favorite people in data and AI actually don't come from technical backgrounds at all. They are domain experts in music, in art, in marketing, in communications. So if you care about really any topic, it is an opportunity for you to learn about AI and how AI can help amplify the way you use your specific skill set in the marketplace.
Thanks. Anyone want to riff on that?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
go ahead, Anne.
talk to a lot of CXOs in retail, restaurant chains, and a lot of times it's coming top down now. Someone like Doug McMillan will give the keynote at CES and say like, this year our focus is on 3 objectives: big data analytics, robotics, and AI. So everyone in the organization has to implement AI. But I'm telling you, over 50% of these folks I talk to, and these are sometimes heads of innovation, are like, how do I do that? What is AI? What does that mean? They really don't understand kind of the basic use cases or how computer vision works or what an edge server is, all of these kind of concepts. So I think as women, you asked about skill set, T, and we really have to use our grace and humility, right? And kind of guide them and inspire them and be really delicate because there's a lot of big male egos out there, right? And so what I typically do, I'll just do an innovation showcase around AI. What are 10, 15 things, different use cases you could do in, say, IKEA or Target, right? Or some of these large retailers that I talk to. But I would also say that you don't even have to have a very technical background. That's not my background at all. But what I am particularly gifted at, and so are many of these folks, because I've seen them on stage before, is I spoke 22 times last year at industry conferences. And so if you have a skill set where you just love to inspire people and excite people and explain things, and as moms, that's what we do, right? So I would encourage you, if you have that skill set, to go to a lot of the industry conferences and build this community. You know how I met T? We both were receiving an award at a voice AI conference. I think many of these other ladies received that same award. And we built the community and we help each other. So whenever I do my panels at conferences, I invite them to also be on my panels. So we help each other out that way to spread the AI evangelism.
Thanks for that. And on that though, I wanted to kind of say, one of the things I see is if you put your hand up internally and just ask your C team or the innovation team if you can be a part of their AI team in some way, like, yeah, it might mean extra hours or whatever, but like every C-level executive is thinking about how to implement AI right now. And there are so many different initiatives that you could probably be a part of internally if you're working for an organization that you feel is innovating. Just ask to be a part of it. Ask to learn about it. Ask to read the strategy document. Like start to educate yourself and start to think about how AI might apply in your role in your team, whether you're sales, marketing, the PM org, right? Like there's so many different use cases. See if there's an initiative internally, like an AI Center of Excellence. I know that's something a lot of organizations are now starting to think of building, which means you can suggest things. You can suggest putting your hand up for things and being a part of those teams. So on education, which is kind of our next talk track, I would love you ladies to share some resources with the audience on where they can start to learn about AI or how they can start to learn. You might be a subject matter expert in NLP if you've already got a career, but you want to learn about robotics or any of these other fields. So do you have any good sources? I'm going to share a link to a video, to an article that I put together at the start of the week. I think it was the start of the week. Gosh, what are we? Wednesday is going so quick. With 70 free training courses. But please, like any other resources you want to share with anybody here so they can start to learn or jump on to the journey.
I would just add one of the great sort of level sets is the ability to just go up to somebody that you know is doing that job today or in that role today, whether it's through LinkedIn or within your company, and ask if you can shadow them, whether it's sitting in a meeting, really playing that fly on the wall, or if it's shadowing them specifically as they do maybe more of a paired programming, meaning as they're building out a model, you can watch or be a part of that project. I think one of the great things that I learned early on was that, I used to tell myself, oh no, I can't ask them. They're doing these great things. I would have all these moments of really fangirling, for lack of a better term, in my youth around people. And as I got older, I realized that people are people at the end of the day. And, I, just like anybody else, has an opinion and a voice that's just as equally of merit as somebody else. And if I, recognize that I want to learn something from somebody else, it really takes, I don't know. In my experience, nobody has ever said no. I mean, you have to be respectful. You can't go into these things and suddenly, derail a meeting. But to be able to be that fly on the wall, a day in the life, for however long that is, either virtually or in person, is incredibly powerful, because there are some tremendous training courses. I mean, in fact, I teach one of them, but I'm not plugging anything here. I think training is great. That will give you the practicum of how you do the work hands on keyboard. Taking it into a real world, though, from the classroom into, let's say, the boardroom, and actually translating that into industry is a very different thing. And that, to me, is in terms of degrees, a lot of us have them all the way up, to being a doctor. But I think the value of my career has really come from being in industry, being in many different industries, getting to take those algorithms and apply them to real world problems across a wide, swath of situations and companies. And that's where, in all my, time working, whether it was, the chief of staff of one of our C levels, can I shadow you and see, what it is when they're engaging with a customer to talk about AI, or actually reaching out to the data scientists to just explain to them, this is something I want to do, especially in my days at Apple, where I was, they called it back then advanced analysts, and we were statisticians, but I had no idea what that meant in terms of engineering. So to be able to tap the shoulder of the engineers to say, can I be a fly on the wall to understand how my algorithm is going to be built into, what you're building from a hardware and software perspective, it changed the course of my life to now being in tech. And so I would just say, in addition to all, I'm sure, the great training resources you'll find about, one, see if you can do a day in the life of either virtually or in person. And then lastly, I'll leave you with mentorship. Mentorship, and even more importantly, sponsorship, are two of the tools you should have in your tool belt at all times. The difference between the two, mentorship is where you're going in there to really learn, to really understand how somebody else is doing it. That's where the shadowing comes in. Sponsorship is where you have somebody who will put their name on the line to help you in your career. So they're putting your name forward when there's a role open. As what was just mentioned, there's a panel. They recommend you to come on the panel with them. You know, they really take you under the wing and help you go to that next level of your career. And you're not going to have the same sponsor or mentors as you go through different levels of your career. Those should evolve and change over time. But I think that relationship between mentorship and then sponsorship, and sometimes they come from the same person as you grow to know them, are incredibly powerful vehicles to help you then have those moments of shadowing opportunity.
Laura, I love that. If it wasn't for my mentors, I wouldn't have a career. Like somebody took, they were like, I remember them calling me a diamond in the rough. And I was like, oh, what, because I'm from the country? And I had really country slang, and I'm also dyslexic. So I was like, school was just not a possibility for me. And so they were like, all right, come under my wing. And she was actually a lady from IBM at the time. And she was just phenomenal for my career. So I'm a huge advocate for that. She taught me so many things that then allowed me to have the confidence to then go on and have a career in digital transformation before AI. So a huge,
I love that. I love that.
I'm glad that Shamala is back with us.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add one last point really quickly. For all of you that are students, and I saw this in the chat, I have never once hired somebody because they came to me with a PhD. I interview a ton of candidates for my team, and I will tell you 10 times out of 10, I will hire the person that has the eagerness, the willingness to learn, to be a part of that program, to ask questions, to think creatively outside the box. You know, yes, they have to have a general basis of knowledge and passion around numbers and statistics. You can't hate that and then want to come into the space. But we have researchers, and research is incredibly important, and I'm not diminishing that at all. But that passion, as what Tierney just said, is what I look for in candidates. And so if you're a student now and you're wondering how do you get in, it's to showcase your passion and what you care about and what you want to learn in these roles that you're going into. So I just wanted to add on that last piece.
Oh, I love that. Lisa, what else, because you've got a doctorate and you went away, and I can see your comment there in the chat. So love to hear your comment. And Andy, to you.
I absolutely want to echo what Laura said there. I didn't pursue my doctorate because I felt like that was a prerequisite for the kinds of roles that I was interested in. I did it as a personal growth journey because I'm a lifelong learner and I'm always looking to kind of take things to the next level. And frankly, I made a promise to my mother before she passed away that I would do it. I had talked about it all my life, and I was not going to let her down even after she was gone. So but just to make sure that I reinforce what Laura said, you do not have to have a doctorate. As a matter of fact, I know many people who are making big impacts in the artificial intelligence field that don't have any level of kind of official university education at all. And I see that happening over and over again. And that's why it's so important to think about this diversity of perspectives that are needed at the table. So whatever your skills are, whatever your background is, think about ways that you can use that to bring your perspective into the environment and to help with what you know about. We need that. We need it in spaces in every industry. We need it in government situations. We need this in nonprofits. Regardless of what your experience is, there is a need for you to apply it in the AI field. So my challenge to you is to really think about what is the thing that is uniquely you, and how do you find an environment, a situation where you can leverage what makes you uniquely you to drive better outcomes with AI.
Oh, I love it. Andy, and then Shamalia, and then
I wanted to just tell you how I learned about AI, because it hasn't been that long for me. So when I was at Dematic, one of the largest supply chain integrators in the world, we were doing, say, Amazon's warehouses, all the mechatronics. And I kept saying to myself, if there's, say, 15 warehouses, why don't we benchmark from the cloud the best one for safety, operational efficiency, productivity, and then control them all, right? And I was like, how would we do that? And I started reading about AI, and that's when I brought in NVIDIA. NVIDIA was absolutely instrumental, and that's why I'm glad Shamala's back with us now, in my development and in my intellectual development for understanding AI. So they came in and helped start POCs, proof of concepts. At that time, I didn't even know what an ISV was, which is an independent software vendor. And now I work for one, right? And by learning how that ecosystem works together, all the parts that you need to enable AI in supply chain, it gave me the tools I needed to go to Lenovo and become head of AI for North America. So it was really a fast learning curve. And I would say NVIDIA is now a household name, especially since last October. Your recognition level, I think, has exploded. But if you don't know, it's NVIDIA, and go to their website, and they have lots of use cases. You can do a drop down, and you can read about companies in all different industries and what they're doing with AI and how they're doing it. So that would be one of my tips for you.
Thank you, Shamalia.
Hey, yeah, my internet dropped, so sorry for that. But hey, so my journey is so different. I would put in a lot of things here, similar to you, Tian. Like in my case, I completed my 10th. I did not even complete my high school, and I got into a diploma in civil engineering. So technically, I'm not even a graduate. Right. I did my civil engineering because I was forced to become an engineer. In India, there are titles like either you are a doctor or you're an.
Oh no, we're losing you.
She froze.
Oh no, what a good story as well. Let me just change this around for a second. Sorry, everyone, technical difficulties. It happens, unfortunately. I know we're talking about the future of AI, but sometimes just bandwidth and connectivity is the core issue. We're gonna segue back. As soon as she comes back, I'd love to hear the rest of that story, because I think it's definitely like going to be inspirational. It's the first time I've heard it. So on that though, I would love to pivot now into AI and the use cases. Obviously, we've talked a lot about encouraging more women to play a part and educating each other, also supporting each other. I think a huge part of that is one, like connect with each other, like each other's posts, comment on each other's posts, try to get more women encouraged to join in the space, because I've heard from so many that they think it's too daunting, or like, oh my goodness, I could never be that person. But when you hear some of these stories and you see that everybody's approached AI from so many different directions, and the one thing that we've had is that curiosity to drive ourselves to learn, to be a part of these communities. I want to encourage you all to be a part of these communities and connect with us all and follow these ladies' podcasts. But before we get into that, which I do want to drop at the end, love to talk about use cases. Specifically want to start, and Andy, I'm gonna pull you up first to talk a little bit about retail use cases, and then to the other ladies, any other use cases, whether it's across insurance, banking. Like, let's talk about what are some of the AI applications at scale currently.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things that are really driving the AI energy and excitement in the retail and restaurant space. The first is just the overall need for speed. That's what disruptive innovators have in common. They have this need for speed. And you think about it, even when you order something online right now, you pretty much pick the one that gets there that day or the next morning, right? We've all kind of got this, especially after COVID, need for speed. Second of all would be reducing customer friction, transactional friction. AI can really help in that area. And the third huge driver right now is the number one issue for retailers and restaurants. Used to be like asset protection, but now it's safety and security, making sure their customers and employees are safe. So how do we do that with AI? Well, what we do is we leverage the security cameras that you see all over the ceilings of retailers and restaurants. We run those streams through the AI software. And for that, you need GPUs and CPUs, right? And then it derives these automatic insights. And we use edge servers to keep all of that content, all of that information on premises. And an edge server is no bigger than your basic laptop, a little bit thicker. So that's on site. So what are some of these use cases that you probably don't even know that's AI? How many of you shop at Kroger? Anytime you go into Kroger, when you do the self-checkout, that's AI. That's actually an edge AI use case. What are some others? Well, at Radius, what we can do is all of the human analytics, right? How many people walked into Chick-fil-A? How long did they stay there? How long were the lines? We can alert if there's a bus coming, that this isn't a good time to clean the restrooms, right? All of a sudden prepare for a deluge. What about if somebody comes in and points a gun or wants to stab someone? This is not a normal posture in a Chick-fil-A, right? We can alert to that. We can either alert to an employee, to a manager, or even to the authorities. So a lot of use cases around safety and security, but retailers really have no idea how many people are even in their store. How long did they dwell? We can tell you what they looked at. Some retailers, like say a CVS, they sell their shelf space. So if I'm looking at Gillette versus Schick, how long did I look at each? Which one did I ultimately purchase? I can then sell that data back to Gillette and Schick in order to negotiate how much I charge for their shelf space. So that's a real benefit to a lot of these retailers. So the other area that we do at Radius AI is self-checkout, where not the kind that you see at Kroger, but we call it Shop Assist, where you put all your items down on the counter, say at a convenience store, and automatically the computer vision is integrated with the planograms. So we already know what that is. Even if you put that Snickers bar in your pocket, we already know it's in your pocket. And then you just simply tap and pay. And if you're buying something that's a age-verified product, such as tobacco, alcohol, or lottery tickets, just a blue light comes on. And so you still have a cashier to smile at you, but they're not taking a scan gun, trying to find the code. That's not really a very human-friendly way to check out. So lots and lots of use cases. If you put my name into LinkedIn, you'll see lots of podcasts where I talk about different ISVs and what their use cases are in different vertical industries.
Thank you, Andy. Who would like to jump up next? Laura, I'm gonna grab you first to talk about a couple of industry use cases. We're gonna go through all of you. So what are you seeing at scale? What are some of the best success stories that you're seeing currently?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, right now, everybody is talking about the augmentation of the chatbot and what it can do for you. But I think if we take that, a step further, and what we're seeing, even internally, is the application into your employees. And what I mean by that is, when you're a new hire and you come on, whether it's a small company or large, there's always a host of questions. You've got onboarding. Sometimes that's in a virtual world or a hybrid environment. You've got tools and access and issues that you need, but you don't know the questions that you don't know. Similar to, a customer calling in to, receive help, they don't often know what they don't know to ask the right questions. And this is why bots in the past have had their failure point, because, much of them had to be, structured in very much of a question and answer format. Even in cases where it could learn and evolve on those questions, from maybe a more reinforcement learn, machine teaching itself. Oh, this is now the top question or entity. Let me make that part of my catalog of questions and answers. It didn't grow as your enterprise grew, and it didn't take into account the environment, all of the flux and changes. COVID is a great example of that, of why suddenly retailers ran out of toilet paper and stock. Well, that's probably a whole other issue, but part of why we ran out of things was because the supply chain was so taxed. And so I think what we're seeing and what we're going to start to see is this application of generative AI really becoming, that true smart bot that we wanted it to be. Not only answering the questions that are put in there, but more knowing the right things to ask you, knowing automatically who you are when you arrive, and then being able to connect all of those dots. So I love the fact that there are tools now that if I miss a meeting, it will automatically go out. If that meeting was recorded, it will have a library of that recording. It will have all of the time points where my name was mentioned. For example, oh, let me follow up with Laura afterwards. So my name gets mentioned, a flag gets put there. It also has a text transcript, and then automatically schedules if there were follow-up meetings that, I needed to be a part of. It will go out and set a tentative calendar request, tied to that meeting, where then I can again go right into that transcript where they made that call out to then better understand what they talked about. It is that idea of sort of working smarter, not harder. I hate the expression do less with more, because that's being taken to all sorts of areas. But that's where I really see this application of generative AI, becoming those smart bots, those office, operations assistants to help us really do the things we want to do in our job and not do the things, administration is one of those things that's the bane of my existence, but really, helping me be effective at work by having that integrative support. And so that's more of a broad sort of, answer to that question. But I think what we're going to see is stepwise, and we're going to see this augmentation of these really smart bots. And then we're going to see that augmentation of the really smart workforce in the applications of generative AI.
Thank you for sharing that. Noelle.
Hi. Yes, I'm trying to be unique because we've just talked about two of my favorite areas. One of them, I will tell you, probably I've worked on the longest, meaning, ChatGPT just came out at the end of last year. And when that happened, it caused a bunch of companies to be like, wow, what is this thing and how do we use it? And one of the things that we immediately saw, actually two things. One is the first thing executives, company leaders were asking themselves is how do they protect themselves in using this really cool technology? Because ChatGPT, if you don't know, it's a website, right? It's owned by OpenAI. It's a research model. You don't want to do anything kind of company specific or private in there. So all of a sudden companies were thinking, how do we do this safely? And as a matter of fact, I saw some really great comments on hey, how do you build this safely and responsibly? And that is one of the premier use cases that I've been working on, is just like you had mentioned before, this concept of center of excellence. How do we create, generative AI is going to start popping up, just like you said, Laura, across the organization. Everyone is going to realize that they have this tool that can augment their productivity. But as a CEO or a C-level executive, how do I harness that and do that safely and responsibly and fairly? And I think understanding that it's actually a socio-technology, right? It's not just about what, the tech, because the tech is cool. It's actually more about the humans and their ability to use, adopt, and ideate with this technology. So I actually spend a lot of my time helping organizations build this center of excellence. But the center of excellence is a little bit of tech, but it's mostly human ingenuity. How do I help humans realize their place doesn't go away? It actually gets more valuable. And then the second one and the last one I'll share with you, because we have a few more people and I want to make sure I don't take anyone's idea. But it's around contact center or customer service, customer success. Now, I don't know about you, but the last 5 years in the world of chatbots has not been delightful, right? Many times I will get on the phone and I will get into what we call an IVR system or a voice system. And I will immediately be like, representative. I just want to talk to somebody. And then even when I talk to someone, they don't know where I've been or what I've done or how to help me. And so I'm starting over. It's just a very frustrating experience. And with 6 children, I have to do a lot of appointment setting and appointment changing and updates. And I talk to lots of agent type people all day long. And I feel like, gosh, there's got to be a way to help them. And so one of my most popular solutions today is Future Contact Center. And it's all about how do we help those people who are on the phone with moms like me who are often emotional because there's something usually wrong happening. How do they become more attentive to me as a human while AI does the work of taking notes for them, of aggregating information about where I was before I got there, of giving them context and awareness of what's important. Even as I'm speaking to the agent, how does AI actually go out and find the information the agent needs and makes it super easy to understand? Today, this isn't how it works. It should work this way, but it's not. And generative AI can be placed in the pre-call, in the mid-call, and in post-call analytics to make humans better. This does not get rid of call center agents. This makes them, it empowers them to be better at their job. And many of you probably know this, but we as humans, we actually like talking to humans. We like communicating to other humans, especially when things are not going well or when we're wanting some support. Many times we found it in call centers, a lot of people just want to have someone to talk to. And so how do we let those humans doing the answering be better at that communication? And generative AI has been that's a huge opportunity, I think, in the space of innovating and helping organizations increase the funnel of people they can help by making those agents more capable and powerful. So that's 2.
you can have as many as you want. Well, Dr. Lisa Palmer, I'm going to bring you up next. And for the audience as well, we are definitely going to break into generative AI. We're going to do a little segment on it in this show as well. So we're going to after the highlights and use cases. But what are you seeing, Lisa, in the space at the moment? And what are you seeing working at scale?
So the biggest use case that I see coming up over and over again is this desire, and it echoes part of what Noelle said there, this need for us to be able to use these fantastic large language models inside of enterprise environments without being concerned about data leakage. So creating those walled gardens, those safe environments for people to be able to leverage in their jobs every day in these really creative ways without having any concerns about sharing anything inappropriate with a public model. So that is by far the item that I spend the most time talking to executives and boards about, is their desire to do that. Things in general fall into two categories from a use case perspective. Whatever the core revenue generating activity of your business is. So regardless of whether it is healthcare or financial services or it's professional services, whatever that industry is, that there is a desire to identify low-hanging fruit use cases for how to improve productivity or provide improved service or an improved employee experience. So either customer experience or employee experience. So on the revenue generating side of the business, that's where questions start, is how can we use this to improve revenue and to improve profitability, irrespective of their industry. And then the second is in the efficiency space, and it's really heavy focus on how can we take the tasks that we do every day, because right now where we're at is it is about AI being used largely for task replacement, task management, task automation. It's not about replacing entire job functions, despite what we hear in the media. This is about task management and what we can do with tasks. So on that, so we've got the revenue side, and then we've got this hardcore focus on productivity and what can we do on that side to make things better about our people and our processes. So anyone that's been in the tech space for a long time has heard about people, process, and technology as kind of the golden triad. And in this particular space, that's what we're talking about, is how do they use technology to improve their people experiences and what's happening with their processes. So those are the kind of both sides of the coin that I spend a lot of time talking about.
Thank you.
What I find is they don't really know what they want is half the battle. And so what I tend to do is show them customer analytics, store analytics, and safety and security. I have about a dozen use cases, and I help them see what is possible with artificial intelligence. And it's like light bulbs are going off. They're like, oh, that's AI? It's really fun. So I would encourage you to kind of have an AI innovation showcase with your customer base.
That's actually, I love that idea. Shamalia, what about yourself? What are you seeing at scale that you're quite impressed about?
I mean, I would have a slightly different opinion about, not just generative AI. I'm also seeing a lot of computer vision kind of things, especially on the autonomous side picking up. A lot of companies are going towards that direction and looking at how can we create an autonomous system, right? And I worked on that space, so I know that's an interesting space and something picking up because of multiple reasons. One of the things I would say is it enables accessibility. Like if you're talking about self-driving cars, many people, this generation, people don't like driving, and they are like, nah, I'll just take Uber or Lyft. And I have known so many people who are disabled in some or the other form, and they cannot drive because of their inability to do so. So self-driving cars have really started to help in that scenario as well. So definitely one area which I'm seeing a lot more interest in. A lot of companies are investing and a lot of solutions are being built. NVIDIA is building self-driving cars itself, right? So definitely that's one area where a lot of innovation is happening and a lot I'm seeing. And in addition to that, I agree with a lot of the folks here that yes, AI is helping with productivity as well. So all the things like generative AI helping with enterprise grade fine tuning, so that I can do things without having to breach any data or anything. If I go to ChatGPT and enter things, that's definitely interesting. But I'm also seeing use cases where AI is helping so many people in so many different ways, whether it is through synthetic voice or custom voice creation kind of use cases, which is helping not just normal people to scale, but also helping people who have some sort of disability as well. So I'm seeing, I love accessibility is my favorite topic, because yeah, I have seen it very closely. So definitely I feel like, all the different use cases are not just helping us to be productive, not just helping us to be more efficient, but it is also helping us to empower people who need them the most. And that is where I'm seeing the trends.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. So for me personally, although I don't do a lot in this space, I am super excited about the advancements of AI, the medical sector, specific for disease diagnosis. I just think for things like breast cancer and all of these different cancers that could be caught early stage and treated. Same with blindness. I know that Google ran their program in India, which they focused on how they could potentially prevent blindness. And they found once building this model and doing these retina scans that the data actually ended up picking up things like how to predict early signs of stroke and all of these other fascinating things that I just think are huge advancements that can help us all live a little bit longer, as well as get medical help to those that may not be able to afford it, or those areas that are so limited because there's one doctor in a remote area and there just isn't enough time to see all of these patients. And if they had done just a simple scan to treat a retina problem, they may actually keep their vision. So things like that I am so excited about, and I can only imagine all of the different types of people that were involved in that program. There was obviously the doctors, and there was obviously the patients of all different sides, all different backgrounds, and that gave the permission for their data to be used. And then additional to that, there's program managers, marketing now, and then obviously the commercial team that's involved in making sure that this application rolls out. So I'm super excited about the medical space, and I think it's one of the spaces that in the next couple of years we're going to start to hear and see some of these AI applications rolled out. I want to get into a slightly different talk track now. I want to start to talk about frameworks and strategies. AI, as we've talked about, and as you can see from the panel members here, touches so many different domains. There's so many different use cases. And we've talked a little bit now about how C-level executives are like, we want you to implement AI, go. And you go, I don't even know where to start. So I'm wondering if you ladies have any practical frameworks, any practical advice for anybody starting out that may need to build a business use case, try to identify, we've heard the word from Andy, POC, proof of concept, start to think about where AI might even impact, or maybe you have a limited budget. So where do you start on your AI journey to start implementing? Because you can't do all of these initiatives at once. So who would like to start? Maybe Noelle, I'm looking at you. You've nodded your head a few times, and then we'll go through.
Yeah, sure. I of course am nodding because this is what I do every day. You're right. There's no lack of enthusiasm from the boardroom. I always say I go from the boardroom to the whiteboard to the keyboard to the chalkboard, which I heard someone like, I think Laura, you had mentioned, that was awesome. But how important it is to really be able to speak the language of each type of person within an organization, because everyone is excited about AI. In a way, it's actually funny because most of us have been, all of us have been in AI before it was cool, right? Before all the excitement. And as part of that excitement, we are now realizing that yes, I do, of course, understand, they understand a little bit about what AI is capable of doing. We're educating them. Andrea said, we're educating them. We're evangelists. We're getting them excited. But there is a very specific, process that I use to help them identify what's the right thing to go after right now. And I always say AI, and specifically generative AI, but AI is a beautiful set of hammers, but not everything is the same type of nail. right? We have to be very specific. I mean, that's the beauty of these models, is that as we move into a world of leveraging pre-trained models, and I'm a big fan of them because I don't have time to build models from scratch when I want to deliver value to my customers right away. And so I want to leverage a model that's already been built. But then, and this goes to a couple of the comments that I've seen in the chat, and thank you, by the way, to all of you, and Tanya and Jingash and everybody who is commenting. I really appreciate you guys interacting with us. It's super fun. But as we're thinking about use cases, I often want a blank slate. I will sit in a room, kind of these innovation days, Andrea, you were mentioning, right? We sit in this room, we get as many diverse opinions and ideas as possible, like not just, women and men, but like all colors, all genders. Like I want moms in there, dads in there, dog owners, cat owners, they're all different. I want them all in there. And then we have them write down, and here's the question we ask. Where is the friction? And it actually goes to what Laura, you were mentioning around people and process. Like everyone knows that there's just pain in the organization. Otherwise, we'd all be happy and doing everything with joy. But there's friction. So where is that friction? And is it a good candidate for an AI solution? And what I often do is I will think to, once I get a list, and oftentimes I'll sit in a room for an hour and I'll end up with 40 little Post-its from the people in the room who are like, this is where I could use some help. Oh my gosh, I wish we could fix this. And what about this? And they're all across the industry use cases that we just mentioned. And of course, and then some. So once I have that list though, I use this metric for figuring out what I should do first. And I look at I know some of you will love this. I look at the core values of the organization. What does the organization, what are their core values? Now, some organizations, shocker, maybe, will be like, core values? Like, oh, I'm not sure we finished that. We didn't get to that chapter in the book. So we then have to go back and start there. But once you have some core values, and often it's around building better customer experience, delivering the best type of service to the world, whatever those core values are, we then look at what is the lowest risk, highest value use case in alignment with those core values. And what that does, the benefit of AI today is we can build AI solutions better and faster than we ever could before with much less data. And so I won't go into much more than that, just to set the premise. And I think everyone on the panel can speak to different parts of this, but I think it's really important to realize everyone's going to have an idea in the company about how to use AI. But and many of us on this panel know that we failed delivering AI because we couldn't harness the energy and deliver a very specific outcome. And when we don't have a very specific business outcome we're driving for, it's hard to quantify, did AI work? Did it do its job? And so that's in addition to what's low risk, what's high value, I also look at, how do we make sure we're delivering something that I can measure success for in a short period of time? And those are kind of the barometers I use to figure out, of all the things we could go after, what are some of the things we focus on?
All of the things. There's so many different things to focus on. I just pull it a post. Dr. Lisa Palmer, I'll pull you up next. I'm going to go through all of you because I think it's such a fascinating question to ask around frameworks and how you approach it in your perspective areas.
So I think frameworks are incredibly important when we're trying to tackle problems that basically involve human emotion. And there's so much human emotion that is tied to artificial intelligence. People are excited about it. They're afraid about it. I heard someone yesterday say, I'm excited. And I said, what's excited? And she said, I'm nervous and excited. So she had made up an entirely new word for it.
I love it.
Me too. Excited. That's the new hashtag.
Excited. I was like, that's awesome. So when we have so much human emotion, it can be really helpful to wrap a framework around it. And Noelle did a brilliant job of identifying a framework that can be really powerful. I think that having a starting place of business value, and she pointed this out, but every situation using artificial intelligence that I have personally been involved in, that I have researched, that I have heard case studies and read case studies about, they all have the commonality of having crystal clear identification of the business value that needs to be created. And you need to have somebody that is constantly pointing you back during your journey to keep you focused on creating that business value, because there are so many things we can do that, and as a project goes along, anybody that's been in tech for a while knows we get scope creep, right? So you need somebody that's really going to hold you accountable to staying focused on that business value. And so that's the first piece of the framework. The second piece is that in order to prioritize, you have to focus on what is going to be customer impacting. Prioritize based on customer value. And the customer could be an internal company customer, or it could be an external customer. But having that focus on business value, prioritizing based upon what customer needs are involved. And then really getting practical about, can you bring this to life? And when we shine light on things like our cultural limitations, you will know the people around that room that you've assembled, they are going to know, that one's going to be a tough sell, or so-and-so is going to be really hard for us to get that past. You will have barometers that tell you whether or not that initiative is more or less likely to be successful. And if you are bumping up against, and you're like, oh, we'd really like to do this, but that one is going to really be challenged from a resistance perspective, you probably want to prioritize something else, because what you're wanting to do is build momentum based off of successes. And at every success that you have builds momentum and builds encouragement for the next project. And the fourth item I would point to is make sure that you set expectations that AI projects are not like typical IT projects. You don't start here and go through a waterfall and everything turns out exactly as we had planned, right? It is an iterative process. It is an agile process, and you're going to have things happen along your journey that weren't what you expected. And there's greatness in the fact that you're going to come across things that aren't what you expected. It may repoint you. You may take that lesson learned and go in a little bit different direction, but that's the positivity of what's happening. You also may come across situations where you go, wow, that didn't work. That's not what we thought would happen at all. And you have to be resilient enough to absorb that and to communicate inside of your organization that this is not a failure, that learning is actually return on investment. And embracing that concept is a key element to being successful.
Oh, Lisa, I love that. And I also love some of the ladies in the chat sharing frameworks. Anyone in the audience, if you have frameworks, if you have links to any learning material, this is a space for all of us to share. We want to encourage community here. Laura, would love to bring you up and talk some frameworks yourself. What type of frameworks do you apply?
Oftentimes, just from a past life at Expedia, I will apply some of the tools as being a Lean Six Sigma black belt. And so there are very much like a capability maturity matrix. There's a suite of tools that those removal of waste and or process efficiency programs have that are actually incredibly helpful for project selection. And it's primarily because those are expensive programs to run. They don't only exist in manufacturing, or while there's some industries where it's heavily, leaned in on, the tools themselves apply anywhere. And so I will often, and you can, Google and find many free templates out there. I will often employ some of the tactics around what they call Kaizen facilitation. And really what that is a really pointed facilitation where, and we can now do this, virtually using tools, different online whiteboarding tools. Mural is a great one, but I'm by no means a proponent of it. There's a ton of them out there that allow you to do either in office and or remote brainstorming, and bringing together. Part of the Kaizen process is making sure you bring the right people into that room. So oftentimes I'll hear people talking, or I'll see how their approach, and they always bring in a set of C-suite, important, those are the sponsors, but they're not really the ones that are going to have the answers to the process if we're trying to make it better. And so for me, whether it's the project selection, what are we going to work on? Whether it's understanding the data source and making sure that we have the underpinnings of that data source so we can model it correctly, garbage in, garbage out. It's getting the right people in the room that are doing that work today. And so before I ever start any project with my team, I will have them what we call walk the process, meaning live a day in the life of, going back to my day in the life of shadowing. I can't tell you the amount of times that, let's say taking, we get a project we're working on for sustainability that resulted in what we call Farm Beats today. It is a not-for-profit open source that helps communities that are underserved by technology understand their planting cycles, along with water and what they should be planting based on the soil conditions where they live. And that's tremendous, to be able to provide that to a third world country that, maybe their wheat, production has gone down. Oh, by the way, you can grow these, different types of beans. And by the way, you don't need to water today because the weather is predicting rain. It is through this idea of getting in the room with the right people that we ended up with that kind of open source world. And that's that whole facilitation of bringing the right people in the room. Because when you have the executives in the room, they're good for maybe that first hour. Set the stage, paint the vision, here's where we're going towards. After that, it's really getting the people that are doing the process today and walking it to understand their day in the life of. You really can't fix something unless you truly understand it. And as data scientists, I believe that the responsibility falls, and the onus is to us, to really go out there and say, oh, this is what the process is. This is that thing I'm trying to fix today. And whether it's my retail or whether it's in healthcare, I spent quite a bit of time with doctors going through how their prescribing practices when we worked on an opioid risk reduction project. And I didn't want to go in with just the idea of, okay, I can put a red risk score that says don't prescribe. That's been done. I want something that's going to take into account a wider variety of sociological, demographic, firmographic, factors before somebody is, denied care or granted care. And it was by going in and really sitting in a day of the life where patients had agreed for me to be there that I could then better understand how doctors who then agreed for me to be there were utilizing that data to make their prescription decisions. And so I would just leave you with, this is more of there are templates out there within that lean process. Kaizen is one of them that will help you understand how to facilitate the kind of discussions. There are tools that come with the idea of walking the process. And then lastly, I'll just say is once you do all that, painting down that current state map of what that process is, most people know the process in their head, and that institutional knowledge leaves as soon as they change companies or as soon as they change roles. So documenting out what that current state process is means that as you start to implement the future state, it may feel like you're never going to get to the end. This is a huge project. But when you can start to implement the future state and see each one of those little boxes change in the process that you were trying to achieve, that means you can celebrate the small wins. So I agree with the idea of failing fast and allowing yourself that permission to fail and then pick yourself up and then learn from it and move on. But I also think we should have successes and rewards for each sort of stage in the process as we're getting to that bigger implementation at the end. So I would just encourage everyone to go out there and take a look at some of those Lean Six Sigma, and specifically Lean Six Sigma tools that are out there for both facilitation as well as truly understanding the process. Only then do I believe you can really get towards defining a project you should be working on.
Ah, love it. Six Sigma. I cannot wait. I've been dying to do Six Sigma for so long. We just keep piling all of the other things I want to learn on in between it all. Andy, I'm going to pop you on then, Shamalia. We have also our next guest joining from the United Nations at 12:30. She only has a 15-minute window. So if we cut quickly to her, everybody at 12:30, that's why, but then we will get back to the normal program. So over to you, Andy.
All right. So I'm going to keep it real, ladies. I'm sometimes calling on the largest convenience chains in the United States. And if I said Kaizen or Six Sigma, they'd look at me cross-eyed, right? So I have to basically do voice of customer research. I have to go to the convenience stores and talk to the managers and the employees about what's causing friction in this environment and what are their pain points. So I'll give you a real life example. We're the largest in the United States in the convenience segment. We have the biggest chains. One of them, their first use case, was the roller grill. I don't eat anything off the roller grill, but apparently there's like 35 different varieties of things that roll, and they need to be replenished every 4 hours. Well, that wasn't happening. I know, sounds gross. Some of that stuff was staying on all day, and then some of it was just being thrown out at the end of the night. So what computer vision was able to help this large chain do is know which of those was selling the fastest. They were getting wrist alerts on a device telling them to remove the ones that were expired. And they were able to save $4,000 per store per month, which is much more than the software costs, right? In just Roller Grill. Now we have 38 different use cases. So you can imagine, we talk about scope creep. I also call it AI appetite. It got voracious. And now they're doing over 20 use cases. But the big key takeaway here, as far as frameworks, when you're doing things at the edge, you need to be careful to future-proof your customers. You need to coach them not to get ISVs, the software vendors, that have different flashy, fun objects, right? Because what happens is each one is going to need a server or some type of device. Well, if they're all different brands and they're all different sizes, A, where are they going to go? And B, they have to talk to each other, right? Everything has to be providing these kind of alerts and go to a dashboard. So future-proof your customers by recommending ISVs that have a platform of use cases so they could grow in AI.
Oh, thank you, Andy. I love that. I love we've got cloud, edge, and all of the things in between. So great coverage. Jamalia.
Awesome. Yeah, I love this topic. So coming from a UX background, for me, it's very important that when we are talking about bringing the different frameworks, we don't forget the users, the end customers. AI has become, a word which is very famous. Everyone is like, let's implement AI here, let's implement AI there. We are talking about that, but we need to first of all see whether it is feasible or not, or is that something users want or not. So in my case, I always start with, before going to the boardroom and having any whiteboarding or anything, I need to have the data to say like, this is important and this is why it is not important. And I have facilitated a lot of co-creation workshops with my customers, because most of the products I have worked on is like product-based cars or smart speakers or things like that, right? So mostly, what we do is co-creation workshops or some sort of research with the customers to understand, like whether this is a feasible use case. Do we really want voice in the car for an autonomous car when someone is already able to sit there without having to drive? They have phone, everything. Why do we need it, right? So we need to do such kind of research techniques and all. So I did those kind of co-creation workshops where I brainstormed with the users, tell me what you want, and then let's see what we can make possible, right? And then we used to go and take those ideas to the stakeholders and boardrooms, and then talk to everyone like, this is what would be beneficial. And once we have that, definitely we pick some ideas, what is feasible. There's business use cases, but there's also use cases like what is feasible technically or not, what's the cost, what's the budget. We have to look at everything, and based on that we come up with some ideas. And once we have the idea, we create some sort of POCs, right? And then we do early access. And we check with a bunch of customers, is this really working for us or not? And if the early access program is working and we are seeing what kind of use cases are coming, then we scale it. If we are not seeing a lot of interest, then we just kill the project and move on to the next. So that is the kind of strategy which has worked for me, given that most of the products I have worked on is slightly different. And coming from a UX background, I refuse to not have users involved in the entire process. So that is why I try to bring users in every phase of my process.
Thank you so much for sharing. And we're about to cut to a dear new friend of mine from the United Nations. I'm super excited to hear from her. So I'm about to bring her up and do some introductions. Avishan, welcome. Hello.
Hello, G. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to this great conversation with a group of amazing, inspiring leaders. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here today. Avisham, would you tell the audience here, we have, we're live currently, we have women joining us from all around the world and some male allies as well. Tell us a little bit about your background. And then I have a couple of questions I'd love to ask you. And I know your time's valuable and you're at the UN today. So yeah, if you could just share a little bit about who you are and tell the audience, yeah, your background.
Surely. Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you all. I hope we can one day all meet in person, but this is how we are right now. I'm in the office, so I've managed to get out of the meeting to be with you all. So sorry that I missed some of the discussions earlier. I'm Avisham Bojnood. I'm Chief Information Officer, United Nations Political Affairs, Peace Building, and Peace Operations. I was born in Tehran in Iran, and when I was born, it was the Iran-Iraq war going on. I was a little girl, and there was war, and we had to run into shelters, and there were tapes all over our window glasses, and I witnessed houses of my friends being demolished because of the missiles attack. And one day, there was a United Nations Security Council resolution 598 that was agreed, and it called for immediate ceasefire between Iranians and Iraqis, and that ended the war, just like that, a 2-page document. And as a child, I remember the impact of this resolution on my life as a little girl growing up in Tehran. And that was just something that was just engraved in me as a way that I want to be part of this institution that tackles conflicts, that comes up with ways to have ceasefires, comes up with mediation between different political parties. So fast forward, I was living in Iran, and it was quite isolated at the time. We did not have access to what was going on elsewhere in the world until one day, a friend of mine told me that her cousin has something called a dial-up modem. I'm like, what is a dial-up modem? So I got to learn about dial-up modem. I set up a network, an NCBBS network, connecting dial-up modems. This is before internet. So you can kind of guess my age now. And here we were. We had a kind of our own first ever dial-up modem social media, and we were sharing music, and I got access to Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls, and I was like, oh, this is what's going on in the outside world. And right there, I realized technology is a great enabler to make a change that we want to see in the world. So fast forward, I said, I want to do software engineering. I want to be a software engineer, and I want to use technology to make the world a better place. So I started software engineering while I was doing my master's. I still had my dream of working at the UN. So I applied for a volunteer position at the UN small office in Tehran. While I was there, using my laptop, a very slow internet connection, I applied for an internship position in New York. And then I came for a 2-month internship in New York. And 16 years later, here I am at the UN in New York with you all, sharing my stories. And I hope that my story inspires more women to use their laptops, sitting in their bedrooms, in their pajamas, or wherever they are, to follow their dreams and to dream big.
Oh my goodness, I get goosebumps every time I get to speak to you. So we met at a CIO event about generative AI, and funny enough, all of the women sat on a table together, and we all started to conversate and find out about each other and see how we could help each other's dreams and initiatives, and then from there a relationship is formed. So while I've got you, wanted to ask, in your opinion, like, the AI revolution is here. How can more women as well as girls across the globe kind of get involved in AI, and what are the challenges and opportunities for them?
Great question. So maybe I'll start with challenges first. So, the economic and social benefits of AI still remains with AI superpowers. That's one of the biggest challenges that we are facing, and we're discussing at the UN on a daily basis. How can we democratize AI? Many developing countries don't have the resources, don't have the means to get on board on the AI revolution and AI journey. And among them, there are so many women and girls that have low income, low access to internet. They don't have the sufficient education. They don't have sufficient data literacy to get on board with AI initiatives. And specifically, I want to point out to women and girls who are living in conflict zones, in war zones, all over the world who are suffering from some serious challenges, who are internally displaced. And these are the women that we should not forget about as we are all building our models and training our models. So based on the, stats from World Economics Forum, it's highlighted that there will be 85 million jobs globally that will be removed by 2025 by AI. But the good point is that there's going to be 97 million new jobs that's going to be created. And this is the opportunity for us, for this group, for this community to make sure that we bring in women and girls from across the world to be part of this conversation and to play a role and to design models that are unbiased, to design models that are helping solving some of the serious problems in the world. I also want to highlight that let's not forget that with pandemic, we had something called a she-cession, which is a recession for women, meaning that many women lost their positions, men lost jobs during this pandemic, and they were staying at home, taking care of their husbands who were working remotely, and the kids and the child support challenges. So we did not make progress there. So let's keep that in mind, that we cannot allow for AI to take more jobs from women. There's a McKinsey report that is showing that there's going to be 80% of women's jobs are going to be automated, whereas for men, it's going to be around 59%, because men are doing plumbing work, they're electricians, they are doing pest removal. These are the type of jobs that are not going to be affected by AI. So let's make sure we have new positions, new opportunities for women and girls out there to jump on this AI journey, because I know it's going to be empowering. I know the way that technology empowered me, it's going to empower so many women across the globe. So let's help support them as we are developing and designing our models.
Oh, I always, honestly, yes, I 100% agree with you. It is one of the most important pieces that we consider is how we create more job opportunity, how we encourage more women to get involved with AI. I wanted to ask you, like, you obviously are a little girl in a country where you didn't have access, and you found your way into technology. You found your way into the career you have, where you can impact so many lives and have a voice in the future of technology and other amazing initiatives at the UN. What advice do you have for young females or women either entering the field, that are in the field, additional to obviously creating jobs? Like, what advice do you have for them?
Great. Thank you for the question. I'm seeing all these comments in the chat. Thank you all for all the comments. I wish I could just go through every single one of them and respond to your question. So feel free to reach out to me after this chat. I'll be happy to take your questions and respond to your questions. And thanks for all the excitement. I mean, it's a really exciting opportunity. And that's why we want to make sure women and girls are not falling behind. And my advice to you all, to everyone, is just be brave. Don't look for perfection. There is no such a thing as perfection. Perfection is a stagnation. Just be brave. Just jump in. Learning is out there. You can take all these amazing online trainings. Like when I was back home in my pajama on my bedroom with a very slow internet, you can just read online. You can do, Microsoft has courses, Google has courses, Coursera, LinkedIn, there are YouTube. I mean, YouTube, we just do everything using YouTube. So just, you don't need a very expensive degree in computer science or data science. You just need to take some of these courses to learn and continuously learning, because this is a technology that is constantly emerging. So keep yourself up to date. Say, like, I don't know, 3 hours per week, you're going to focus on learning about the new technology that is coming out, and make sure that happens. Have a goal in place. So that's one of the important parts. Make sure you're part of a community like this. Thanks to amazing T for setting up a community that just inspires you, that pushes you forward. We all need to be part of this community to share knowledge. So knowledge sharing is power. There was a time that people were saying knowledge is power. I'm saying, it's about knowledge sharing. Those who share their knowledge are the most powerful in the room. So connect with them, connect with those, have mentors, always works. We need amazing men out there who come in to support us, because we all know the challenges around leadership and we want to see more women in leadership roles. That's when men come in to help support us with mentorship programs. Let's help support each other. And of course, as you are going through this journey, think about those women and girls who are suffering in conflict, who are internally displaced, who are looking for ways to get out of a serious conflict that's having an impact on their livelihoods. Think about designing a model to empower those, have those in mind. Think about the biggest problems in the world that you want to solve using AI, because I know it's possible. We just need your voices there. We just need you to be there to flag those problems. Thank you.
I'm muted. Avishan, thank you honestly for sharing that. I had chills thinking about, and it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. We're talking about getting more women involved and why. Women have a lot, and I'm saying that men don't have empathy, but women just inherently have a lot more empathy. And if we're thinking about some of these big world problems that drive impact across women women and men in countries of conflict, right? Children that don't have the ability or the access to some of the luxuries that we have to even do an online course on YouTube or to take a course on Coursera or any of these other luxuries, I think is huge. So with that, I know you said you only had a few minutes to join us today, and I want to be very mindful of your time. Do you have any kind of leaving thoughts or anything else you would like to say to the women and men that are here that hasn't already been covered?
I'm just going to say, let's continue this conversation. Let's be part of this community, and let's turn this into an amazing global community where we involve everyone and we make sure we don't leave anyone behind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. There's Avishan. She is honestly one of the most humble women I've met in recent times. I feel so fortunate that the universe brought us together, and I hope you all connect with Avishan. She's very approachable and she's working on some amazing initiatives. So on that, let's get back into the rest of today's program. I'm going to segue everything now into the world of generative AI. It's our next topic and something that is very near and dear to everybody here. Obviously, the impact of generative AI is influencing not just business, but the creative landscape. It's influencing everything from image to text to video to voice, all of the fun use cases. So let's start with that. Let's start with some of the fun use cases, and then we'll get into the things that it can't quite do. So maybe I'm going to pick Noel. I'm going to pull you up. Why don't you kick off what is generative AI? What's it impacting? And let's spend the rest of this session just quickly bouncing through that. Oh, I think oh, wait, 2 seconds. I muted. Oh. Everyone is on mute.
You muted me. No.
I muted everyone.
I'm so glad.
Back.
Am I back now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, great. Awesome. But wow, that was amazing. I'm so glad, even though we could only have 15 minutes, like that was amazing. So super excited to have her join our community here. Yeah, I would say, so generative AI, like I had mentioned before, many of us have been working on AI and AI solutions for a long time, for a decade myself. And only in the last 6 months have like people come out of the woodwork to be like, wow, this AI stuff is cool. And I'm like, yeah, like what I've been posting about for like 10 years. So it's very exciting times that the world is realizing the capability that AI offers, specifically in the area of generative AI. And I always like to encourage people to think about, again, this whole concept of hammers and nails. I don't know if that resonates with you, but it makes sense to me. Like there's lots of tools that we can use to solve so many problems. You saw me mention when we were talking about, Andrea, you were talking about the grill roller things. And I immediately thought of like Invisalign and how they decided to create an entire business 3D printing liners. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if I became like the grill roller 3D printer machine and just created an opportunity to like, that's a cool idea. We should do that. But generative AI has created an opportunity for us to have these types of ideas and immediately take action. And so I talked to you a little bit about how contact center is evolving with generative AI, but really AI in general. I often say that generative AI is a great it's a technology that is built on what we call foundation models, right? And these foundation models are trained on the world's data. We've already covered that world's data is only a fraction of the world, right? It's only those people who could get content on the internet at the time that this data was collected, which isn't everybody. And so immediately when we use these models, the good news is most of us as humans, there are communication patterns that we all share. Like we all tend to resonate with certain types of communication. Like me, I'm excited. I'm almost always happy. I do cry over my dishes to keep it real on occasion. But for the most part, I'm happy and excited about the work that I do. And when I share that excitement, people also get excited. And this AI model knows that, right? Because it understands human communication. So generative AI in my world, I have been using it very much directed towards unstructured data. And it's a big world of data that companies and really we have as a society, but it's a whole bunch of data that's really been hard to harness and get insights from because it's how humans talk or how we do videos or how we analyze, like even autonomous vehicles, as we were talking about before. And so what I'm starting to see massive across all industries is this new opportunity to gain information and insight from data that used to be inaccessible. It used to be very hard to identify, interpret. I mean, learning at Alexa, I remember it was very hard to predict what a human would say to Alexa. We had no idea that the number one thing people would say is to ask Alexa to marry them. We didn't know that. We had to figure out a way to answer that question.
Wait, what?
I know. And the second most common thing was, I love you, which is adorable, but what do you say, right? We all know what happens when a human says, I love you to another human, and then they just sit there and don't say anything back. So these are things you just don't think about when it comes to human conversation. And that's really where generative AI shines. It's a predictive model that predicts human language, and it knows how to do that very well, but only in the context of a human in the loop, which I saw a bunch of us chime in on the chat around. We have to have a human in the loop that says, here's this type of human, right? Here's the context for this conversation. Here's the context for this job or this role or this task. And I'll maybe end with this really important concept, Lisa, that you talked about, which is this concept of task identification and task analysis, that we're not really going in. And even though we just talked about roles being removed, what we're really seeing is when you get into the technology that it's really good at, generative AI is really good at very specific tasks. And those specific tasks could be, and honestly for me, it's what are things that take up my time in my day? One of the things that takes up the most time is my inbox. Reading, I get 400 emails a day and all of them are kind of good. Like they're worth reading, but I don't have time for that. So Microsoft just released Copilot to some of us, and I am using it today, and I can use Copilot to give me a summary of the entire thread of an email. It takes my time to read 400 emails. Like, granted, I don't read them all, but the ones that I do read, like I can be actionable. And guess what? It's smart enough to actually tell me what actions I should take. Super helpful. So I'm seeing this used not only in industry, but also as an individual productivity accelerator. And that I think is really exciting about what the next year and a half holds for us.
Yeah, wow, I love that. Laura, I'm going to throw you in next, and we're going to cycle through everyone. I just can't believe how quick 2 hours is nearly gone. We're down to the last 10 minutes. But Laura, please continue. Any comments on generative AI? Like, this is just a session on what's working well. Obviously, you're at Microsoft, and Noelle's already given a plug on Copilot. But yeah, would love to hear from you. Oh, wait, I think I muted you. 2 seconds. Nope, you're not muted, my side. I might jump to you, Shamali, while we work out the sound, and Laura, just do a test when you come on. You can, we'll still be able to hear.
Yeah. So generative AI, I mean, Noel actually summarized it really well. There are a lot of things, we talk about language. It's a combination of language and, multimodal. For example, with generative AI, you are not just able to say, write me a poem or things like that, but there's multimodal as well. You can give it an image, you can give it text, or you can give a combination of either or both, right? Give an image, give a text, ask it to write a story based on that, or describe the image. Generative AI is also able to do those kind of things. Imagine bringing back the accessibility for people, like describe this image, tell me what's happening in the background, all those kind of things. So how important it can become when we start to bring those. So generative AI is broader than all the different aspects we know about. Language is just one of them. But then images, right? Or we're talking about, in this image, tell me, computer vision, autonomous cars. In this, tell me, where's the trees or where's the house. So it's able to mask and it's able to tell you, like, okay, this is the image of a house, or so computers are able to understand a lot more things nowadays with that. So generative AI is really becoming very, very important and popular, not just because it is a buzzword and ChatGPT was launched. It was there even before that, just that ChatGPT has made it much more prominent, in sense that now people know what it is and understand what it is, right? But generative AI, in my mind, is definitely going to help in so many different use cases, in so many different scenarios, to people, from productivity, like we spoke about, like customer care. And I remember when I was working with Amazon, one of the things we were working on is the customer care, and it's a very painful process even for someone to just understand, like, customers have to wait long enough to get responses from the agents, because yeah, there's a human, right? That entire pipeline can be removed if we have generative AI, which is able to understand the human conversation, understand who's there, understand the entire context of the background of all the things happening, and give the responses, and also understand the human emotions, which is so important. Like, I'm angry, so the words I'm using is, and we're not there, it will come soon. Understanding that part also is so important. Like, okay, if this person is angry, how do I respond? Or if this person is really frustrated because, yeah, the order has not come, they are waiting, they are desperate about it, so how does the agent respond back? So those kind of things, generative AI is going to definitely become smarter and smarter. And to Noel's point, like, yeah, we've been thinking about it from 10 years back. Like, I have a patent about the exact same thing. Like, based on the personality, the AI should be able to respond back with the same kind of words. Like, Alexa has a persona, or Siri has a persona. So why generative AI cannot have a persona which I want it to have, and then respond based on that, right? So people have been thinking about it, and seeing it in practice is definitely exciting.
Thank you. I've actually was just having a conversation yesterday about each large language model or generative model has its own different unique qualities, right? And not every language model is right for the end use case. And I was doing a little bit of research on the Hugging Face have a leadership board which does a scoring. Again, it's a scoring from their perspective, so you can look at each of the different language models, and I'll drop the link in now so any of you can see it. But you really need to start with an understanding of, like, what's your use case, and then kind of looking at what are the different language models that are available and which language model will be best for your use case. Obviously, you've seen some now, like Bloomberg, they've got their finance domain. Like, if you've got a domain specific use case, you might want a domain large language model or a foundation model that's tuned. So wanted to riff on that for a second with you all. And Laura dropped, I think. She'll come back. So Lisa, what are your thoughts on large language model selection, and how are you seeing the comparison between some of them? Like, do you just kind of look at 3 or 4? Do you advise your customers on multiple? Like, can you talk us through a little bit of how you're approaching each different large language model or use case?
I'm going to give just a very practical tip. There is a website called POE.com. PO allows you to play with a multitude of different large language models all in the same interface. And what I love about this is that it is a powerful education and awareness elevation tool. So you can quite literally create the same prompt and drop it in and see what ChatGPT says in response to that. Take that same prompt and drop it into Llama, or drop it into Palm, or Claude, these different large language models, and you'll see a direct comparison difference of the responses that you get and the variance in the way that these models are tuned to respond. So just from a very pragmatic perspective, it's a powerful way to raise your own understanding of how different the results can be from interacting with exactly the same prompt. And it's also a powerful tool for educating your executive teams, your board teams, to let them have the experience so that they see for themselves the differences in these models. And it helps to provide an underpinning for additional conversations about whether they want to proceed with something that's a small language model that's specific to a situation that they're trying to resolve or address. So it's a strong awareness and elevation tool. And it also gives you that comparative between the capabilities for models to understand that some models excel in things like math, and some models excel in legal areas, and some models tend to be more cautious with regard to the way they analytically, step by step, progress through their thought process in emerging from one line of interaction to the next. So I would say that that's the most pragmatic advice I can give to help you to get started in raising awareness about what the differences can be. And then based on those experiences, you can have some more detailed conversations around what is probably the most appropriate approach for them to take, given the specific, and I'm going to circle back to business value that they're trying to create with the project that is on the table. So that's just a really easy way to open dialogue, to have people experience it. I actually love to get people at a keyboard and have them do it live, do it together. It is, I mean, people will go, oh, I told it to ask this, and I told it to ask that, and here's the differences. And then a really fascinating thing to do is to compile all of the different results based on the name of that particular language model, and then ask each of the language models to analyze the difference in the response it gives you. And each of the analyses also look very different. So that starts to get people a hands-on experience with the models. And I love that exercise.
I love encouraging people to be hands-on. Also encouraging people to share like prompt ideas, create your prompt libraries. There's also prompt library websites for ideas as well, if you want to peruse some of those. But the quickest way I've found for even getting my team involved, and that's not necessarily the AI team, just company-wide, is creating prompt competitions. I love a good prompt competition. You create a prompt template and then put the boxes for them to insert their own version. It might be a sales pitch in the style of, and they could do it as their favorite rapper, or their favorite poet, or whatever it may be, and just get people using. And I found that to be a really engaging way for people to start to understand the concept of generative AI. So with that, I wanted to get into Andy, yourself as the last on generative AI, and then into closing, because we're already at 2 hours. I mean, where did time go? But yeah,
well, we are just so lucky, ladies, that AI has had its iPhone moment, right? Last October, when ChatGPT 4 came out, my mom started hearing about it in the news, and she's like, I think I know what you do now, right? Like, everybody suddenly is excited about AI. But there's a couple of warnings. Noelle gave us a really great background on why we should not always trust what the data that, the output that we get from it, keep in mind that it hallucinates. It's not always accurate, but it's like one of those girlfriends you have that acts like she's a know-it-all and everything she's always right, even when she's not. So be careful. And also, I had a breakup recently. I tried to write like a goodbye, you're out of my life letter. Not good for that. It doesn't do human emotion well at all. I had to actually do that the old style way. But let me tell you, the future, ChatGPT, what's going to happen is, instead of pulling from these large language models, let's say you're McDonald's and you've been using our software for a year. Now you have this huge database of your own data. And the future of AI is definitely voice. And so you can query your own data. Now you know it's accurate, right? Say like, which stores sell the most Big Macs? Where am I wasting the most food? Which is my busiest store? Mm-hmm. Think about the potential, even the roller grill, right? Which is my best-selling hot dog type, That's the future. That's our next gen product, is going to have multimodal. I heard somebody say that today. I think it was Shmala, where we're going to have voice and vision and sensors all talking to each other. And so it's just going to be a really rich experience. So I'm super excited about the future.
Thanks, Andy. And with that, everyone, we're coming to our close. I am so excited that today happened. And I will admit, thinking about producing my own show whilst trying to stay engaged is a little difficult, but I made it through personally on my side with quite a few heart attacks, but I made it. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for these women here. They not only have always supported anything that I've wanted to do digitally and in person, but they're the first I go to ask questions, to ask advice. I strongly suggest to everybody in the audience, please connect with them. These women not only create their own content, but they are willing to help and support anybody interested to get into the field from all sorts of different spaces across the world. Another closing thought would be, obviously we need more women in the space, so be brave, start to educate yourself, start reading, start sharing. We've heard today, sharing knowledge is power. Hype each other up, stop the judgment. I mean, we can pick 50 billion faults in everybody. We can pick on each other, or we can change our energy and support each other and start to actually realize that none of this would be possible. Building diverse applications without diverse backgrounds, which means working with people that you might not necessarily understand culturally, having a very open mind to understanding that the world of digital, the world of AI needs to be inclusive, and so do we. So with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank you, ladies, so much for joining. Please connect with them. If you haven't connected with them, connect with them. Also connect with each other. And if any of you are popping up in little communities around the world, go create meetups, meet each other for coffee, create little meetups in the towns, the cities, the countries that you're in. And with that, I'm going to leave you all. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you for being an amazing host. Bye, T. Thank you.
That was awesome. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.